Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Roundtable. Unfortunately, the table is not so round because Kendrick Marshall won't be joining us. He told me he tried to teach his young son a new wrestling move, and his son actually pulled that wrestling move, and now Kendrick has got some back problems. So he's down for the count. Kendrick, get well soon, son. Get well soon.
Got to be more careful.
All right. Anyway, I'm Ken Rashad. He's Chris Stevens, and that's Jared Hoffman. Like I said, welcome to another live edition of the HBCU Sports Live. This is the Roundtable edition, and we've got some interesting topics to discuss. The end is in sight, as we know it, HBCU Sports, and we'll get into that shortly. But before we get into the show tonight, be reminded that you take the time to become an HBCU Sports member. You can become a level 1 or a level 2 supporter. By all means, take the time to go to hbcusports.com/donate and donate to support the operation. Whatever you can give would be greatly appreciated, and we'll leave it at that. So, gentlemen, let's talk about the topic of our of the what are we talking about? The 5.
Yeah, today, we're going to start with Jared's 5 games of the week, which is action packed. So, Jared, take it away.
5 games of the week.
Yep. Well, first of all, just to address it, if you see me looking to my left, it's because I'm watching Norfolk State's women. They're currently playing against the University of Alabama, who is the 22nd nationally ranked team in the nation. So excuse me if my attention is kind of, both directed both ways, but we continue with the show. So we start with a Friday night matchup between Howard and North Carolina Central. Both teams are playing for their MEAC lives. They're both playing for a potential share of the MEAC title as well. The last 2 MEAC champions, Howard and North Carolina Central, both taking losses to South Carolina State. So, yeah, this is both teams trying to keep their head above water and trying to create some mayhem in the MEAC where we could potentially have a 3-way tie should a game that I'm going to talk about later has some kind of result. The SIAC championship game, CIAA championship game, pretty self-explanatory. Clark Atlanta playing in its first SIAC championship game in forever, and Miles playing its first SIAC championship game since 2021, trying to win their first championship since 2019. Clark Atlanta led by head coach Teddy Keaton in his first season from Allen University, led by quarterback and former SIAC player of the year, and potentially this year's SIAC player of the year, David Wright III, and the loaded receiving core that includes Jamal Jones and Virgil Young and Armand Harris. They're going against the Miles defense that's one of the best in the country. Shut down Clark Atlanta earlier this season, beat them in that matchup. So they're trying to replicate that performance and come out with an SIAC championship. Clark Atlanta looking for a different result. Virginia State and Virginia Union. No, that is not a typo. Yes, you saw that last week. It's happening again, this time for the CIAA championship. Johnson C. Smith, unfortunately, they suffered a loss in their season finale against Livingstone after an 8-0 start and were not able to, win in their season finale and clinch a berth in the CIAA championship game. Virginia State, the ultimate opportunist, no edge. They won in their season finale against Virginia Union, and by virtue of Johnson C. Smith loss, they clinched the berth in the CIAA championship game, which means we see a rematch between Virginia State and Virginia Union. Both 2 teams with high-powered offenses led by 2 dynamic running backs, Jada Byers, who could potentially be the CIAA Offensive Player of the Year, and Jamil Williams, both the 2 top rushers in the CIAA, 2 top receivers in Malik Hunter and RJ Vick. This is just going to be a fun matchup to watch. 2 top defenses as well. We'll get into those matchups a little bit more later, but those conference championship games, you're going to want to be glued to the TV to watch that one. And then we got a pair of matchups where we could see the MEAC and the SWAC East potentially be clinched. Starting with the MEAC, we have South Carolina State going up against Morgan State. They're traveling to Baltimore, trying to clinch the conference for the first time since 2021 and for the first time in the Chennis Berry era. South Carolina State has just shocked a lot of people. They haven't really shocked me, but they've shocked a lot of people. Chennis Berry in his first season coming from Benedict, bringing a lot of his guys from Benedict, including Jaden Brogdon, Eric Phoenix, Caden High. This is a team that executes at a very high level. They had that one slip up against Florida A&M, but other than that, they have proven to be a team that is not too big for the moment, that is not too big for the FCS level. They are ready to compete, but they have a juggernaut defense in Morgan State. Looking at them in the rear view, excuse me, not in the rear view. What's the mirror that's in front of you? I don't know, whichever. Anyway, Morgan State, one of the top defenses, has been very good despite the fact that they played much of the season without Eric Hunter. Elijah Williams, a player that you might want to look out for because he will be on a lot of teams' NFL draft big boards, or potentially will be an undrafted free agent signing for your favorite NFL team. So they're looking to play spoiler and trying to keep themselves in the race as well. They are currently 2-1 in the conference and trying to keep themselves in position for potentially getting a share of the MEAC title. And if things go right, they could potentially be in the Celebration Bowl should they win this game and win next weekend. Some things also go their way in the final week. And then we got Jackson State trying to clinch the SWAC East, going up against Alabama State. Jackson State has, they've had a up and down season, suffered a disappointing loss against Grambling State, in which they committed, I believe, 4 or 5 turnovers, something like that in that game. But they've cleaned up since then. They're led by running back Irv Mulligan, and he's going to try to run through an Alabama State defense that does not get run through a lot. They are a very stout unit, and they are going to try to play spoiler to the Jackson State Tigers, who simply need a win, and they will be in the SWAC championship game. So those are my 5 games to watch for this week.
I look at this. Go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say thank you, Jared, and then ask you, Ken, which games are you watching out for this weekend?
Well, I was going to watch. I was just going to say the Jackson State Alabama State game is so anticlimactic right now. I wonder why. Grambling just screwed that up, didn't they? Just put a monkey wrench in that entire weekend. Now, granted, Bama State still has something to play for. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I think let's just say they beat Jackson State and they win their. Oh no, are they done?
No, they have
they got Miles.
No, they got Tuskegee.
They got Tuskegee.
They have Tuskegee in the Turkey Day Classic.
Yeah.
Oh, they still have PV. Okay. So they can beat Jackson State, beat PV, and I guess hope that Jackson State can lose to Alcorn, and I guess
that will put them in the tie with Jackson State.
Right, and they would
Florida
get the tie, right?
That'll create a 3-way tie between them and Florida A&M should Florida A&M win their season finale.
Yeah.
So basically, Alabama State would need a win and a Florida A&M loss to keep them out of the tiebreaker. And if they beat Jackson State, they would own that tiebreaker.
Yeah. So we'll see, but I don't know. Kind of appears just a tad bit anticlimactic to me. South Carolina State and Morgan State. It's a game. I wonder if my man Big Worm though can pull something out. Maybe you get on that elliptical machine, man, and make some magic happen. I don't know, but South Carolina State's rolling. So obviously I'll have my eyes on those 2 games, and Howard, North Carolina Central. That in itself, those will be the 3 games I'll be watching this weekend.
Those are some pretty good choices. I think for me, I got to go with South Carolina State. Morgan State is my game to watch because I really want to see if Chennis Berry Well, I mean, the job isn't done until they officially close out MEAC play against Big Doss and Norfolk State the following week. But that becomes anticlimactic, as Ken would say, if they're able to beat Morgan State. But this Morgan State offense has averaged 36 points a game the last 2 weeks. Imagine if they had been doing that throughout the rest of the early parts of the season. This would probably be a legitimate MEAC champion. Well, it's still kind of sort of a MEAC championship game, but it would be like a legitimate MEAC championship game if Morgan State's offense has shown up just a couple more weeks. But as it is, they still have a chance to play spoiler. They still have a chance to wreak some havoc at the top. And we can't overlook the fact that Howard beat Central by 30 last year. So that's not a gimme for Central either. I mean,
hung 50 on them.
Yeah, hung 50 to 20.
I was there. It happened.
It was the biggest shock of 2023 by far. So we can't automatically assume that Central is going to be Howard on Friday, even though I think they will this time around. But we said that last year. But yeah, I feel like this South Carolina State team is just clicking on all cylinders at the right time. You got Eric Phoenix at quarterback, pressing the right buttons. He's got Caden High, well, he did have DeAndre Duhart. I asked Chennis Berry on Monday because DeAndre Duhart only had one carry and went out of the Howard game with an injury, never returned. And Coach Berry said he'd have to wait for the injury report. So they might be a little light in the backfield without Duhart. But you got Phoenix, you got Keyshawn Toney, the tight end. And then, of course, on the defensive side of the ball, you got Broughton, as Jared mentioned, and Aaron Smith, who's going to the Shrine game. So that is going to be a very good game to watch. But Morgan State has a lot of talent on their team as well. So that should be a very fun game to watch. That's going to be the main one for me. I think the runner-up is probably going to be the SIAC championship game because Clark Atlanta has just been like the best story. It was them and Johnson C. Smith for the best story in Black college football until Johnson C. Smith, both of those shoes finally dropped. They dropped. And, now seeing that Clark Atlanta has a chance, after going 0-10, this would be probably the most dramatic worst to first in HBCU football in a very long time. And I would like to see him do it, but Miles is a very talented ball club. So they're going to have their hands full, but those are the two games I'm going to be watching. And
no, I was going to say, so speaking of championship games,
yes,
SIAC game, Miles coming in at 8-2 versus a Clark Atlanta team that probably hadn't seen anything like this in a long time. What are we to make of this matchup, gentlemen? Jared?
Oh, I didn't know I was starting.
I'll start with you. Yeah.
So these teams have both championship games are rematches. Miles took it against Clark Atlanta earlier this season. And the thing that Miles does is that they just generate pressure. They're just a master at generating pressure. The defense, how Clark Atlanta attacks this defense, what they learned from that first matchup against that Miles defense will determine whether or not they win this game. They have to. They are a very big play offense, but Miles doesn't allow you to beat them with those big plays. They make you beat them by taking what they give you. If you go against what they are giving you, you are not going to win that game. And that's what happened in their first matchup. They did a good job protecting David Wright. I believe only gave up 2 sacks in that game. So if they're able to protect David Wright and they are able to get the ball out quickly and efficiently, I believe that Clark Atlanta will have a chance. But to me, I just feel like Miles is just in that rare air that this is their year. I can't see them losing this game. I feel like Clark Atlanta will make it entertaining and Teddy Keaton will have his guys ready, but Sam Shade and Miles is just in rarefied air. And we need to talk about the worst to first for Miles. 2 years ago, they were 1-9.
Yeah.
And for them to, in 2 years, turn that into an SIAC championship game, into a SIAC championship win, that would be truly remarkable. So I feel like I'm going with Miles in this game, but I would not be surprised if this one goes down to the wire.
Yeah, I have to agree with Jared. I haven't watched enough of Miles, but I know that they have 2 defensive ends, Jermichael Rogers and Rock Dowdell. David Wright III doesn't want to smell what that rock is cooking, trust me, because if he gets in the backfield, it is going to be nightmare city for Clark Atlanta. And, David Wright makes everything go. If they can, keep him running for his life, even though he's a strong thrower on the run, you can't win games like that, running for your life every step of the way. So that Miles defense is going to make it really tough for Clark Atlanta. And Clark Atlanta has been a great story. And I think they'll continue to be a great story as long as they keep Teddy Keaton his hitch, because we need to be honest about that. He's going to get some phone calls this winter. Make no mistake about it. But this, as Jared said, this Miles team under Sam Shade has just been great all year long. I mean, they went undefeated in the SIAC. They had a chance to beat West Alabama earlier this year. I mean, they literally lost that game in the final seconds. So this is a team that's not only built for the SIAC, they're built for the Division II playoffs. So I think Miles is going to pull that one out. And Ryan Bunn in the chat says Miles by 14 or more. I think I lean towards that. I think it probably ends up like 35-21, somewhere in that neighborhood.
So just an update for those of you who may not be aware, Norfolk State is down. It's trailing number 22 Alabama by 3.
They trailed at half.
They're trailing by 1 now. Diamond Johnson's going to work. And Zay, as you guys know, Zay Green, who used to be a UAPB last year, is now playing for the University of Alabama. It is 51-50 right now with 7:10 left to go in the fourth quarter.
Everybody hashtag beat Zay Green.
So, gentlemen, real quick, getting back to the SIAC game. And this may be a tad bit premature, but since we won't have a chance to meet until Monday to talk about this game after the fact, I'm curious to know, assuming who wins and who loses. Let's just say Clark Atlanta loses this game, and this question can be addressed for both teams. What will be the narrative about Clark Atlanta if they lose this game on Saturday?
I don't think you can ascribe any narrative to Clark Atlanta other than that this was a great season for them, win or lose. Because remember, this is a team that had not won a football game since October 15, 2022. Their last winning season was 2008. So when you take into account those two things, I mean, the one game they were supposed to win last year was against Morehouse, and they lost that game. And middle of the season last year, I mean, they fired Willie Slater, who of course was, a great head coach at Tuskegee. And then, he tried to build that program up, and they asked him to leave after 5 games. So they just had no confidence in him. So you bring in Teddy Keaton, who had a really good year at Allen. And I thought that this Clark Atlanta team would probably win like 3 games max. And you would call that a successful season. But 7-2-1 for this program, or 7-3-1 if they lose on Saturday, it's still a successful season. I think if we're gonna ascribe any narrative to Miles, it's that Sam Shade has built a really good program there. I think even if they lose, they still get some consideration for a Division II playoff spot.
I was just about to ask. Yeah, do you think they get consideration for the playoffs?
Absolutely. Keep going, Chris. Absolutely.
Uh-oh.
Oh, goodness. I'll take the blame on that one. That was an Xfinity. I cut him off. It was my fault.
Chris, Xfinity got you, man, and they got you good. So Jared, you're saying that in the event Miles loses, there's still a chance that they can make the playoffs?
Absolutely, because if you look at their strength of schedule, they've beaten all of the top teams in the SIAC. I don't have their schedule right in front of me, but like they've beaten all the top teams, the teams at the top of the standings. They've beaten all of those teams. So they're in the same position as Johnson C. Smith to me. They have an opportunity to get to the Division II playoffs. If anything, this is more about Clark Atlanta needing to win to get to the Division II playoffs. Because even though they have that win against Fort Valley State, outside of Fort Valley State, they don't have a win against a team with a plus 500 record. They beat Tuskegee, who was at 500, but they don't have anybody that is over 500 on their resume. So it will be Clark Atlanta that needs this win more than Miles. Miles would just be the icing on the cake and potentially hosting a Division II playoff game should they win this game.
All right, gentlemen. So that is the SIAC football championship game scheduled to be played this Saturday. So we move on to the CIAA championship, a game that will feature a rematch of last week, Virginia Union and Virginia State. So I'll start with you, Chris Stevens. What are we to make of this matchup?
I'm gonna probably come under fire from Panther Nation for this, but it felt like to me they weren't really sweating that game last week too much because their spot was. I'm not accusing anybody of any nefarious, shall we say, wagerable activities. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that even though this is the Douglas Wilder Bowl, as I have coined it, it really wasn't that big of a deal to Virginia Union because their spot in the CIAA championship game was already secure. So Virginia State, good. I mean, and that's not to say anything away from Virginia State. That's a really good team too. They still had to go out there and execute, and they did. But to me, the biggest thing I want to see is going to be on the very first possession, whether it's Virginia State with the ball or Virginia Union, who is going to come out with that aggression that we probably didn't see enough of last week. That's what I need to see. I need to see if Virginia Union is going to, if they have the ball first, are they going to feed State a steady diet of Jada Byers, or are they going to, if they get or if they're on defense first, are they going to, rush everything they have at Romello Williams? I need to see that Virginia Union is going to take this. I mean, it's the CIAA championship game. If you're not going to take that seriously, God bless you, but I feel like they will. So I just need to see some aggression. I mean, last week was aggressive, but it wasn't aggressive enough for me. I need to see these two teams who fittingly are playing the last CIAA championship game in Virginia, because remember, next year it moves to Durham in Durham County's the city stadium over there. So in North Carolina. But Virginia, either way, Virginia Union, Virginia State, I need to see on the first possession. I need to see some nastiness. I need to see some aggression. I need to see that this is a win or go home game for either one of those teams, because it is right now, because neither one of them has a real non-conference win that they can hang their hat on for an at-large. So the winner of this game is going to be the team that goes to the FCS playoffs, and the other one is going home.
Jared?
Yeah, along the lines of what Chris said. And even if they win this game, they might not, get a FCS playoff berth, because Virginia State's only win against a plus 500 opponent was against Virginia Union, and Virginia Union's I believe their only plus 500 win was against Winston-Salem State. So both teams' strength of schedules are, not the strongest, compared to Johnson C. Smith, who has wins against Virginia Union, Virginia State, and Winston-Salem State and Shaw. So both teams definitely need this win. I think the thing that Virginia Union can look for is RJ Vick was a constant success for them in that game last week against Virginia State. Whenever they targeted RJ Vick, he either drew a pass interference penalty or got a big gain that put Virginia Union in position to score. So I think that's the key for them, is that if they attack RJ Vick, if they get Jada Byers going, and then that opens up lanes for RJ Vick, Virginia State is going to be in some trouble. And the same thing for Virginia State. It's kind of interesting how these two teams mirror each other. If they get Jamil Williams going and then they target Malik Hunter, that's going to be problems for Virginia Union. So I think the thing that is going to be most important is who is able to generate pressure better. Virginia State has been the top defensive unit in terms of, generating stops in the country, and they were very good at, generating stops in the game against Virginia Union last week. They forced 3 interceptions in that game. So if they're able to, be able to generate that pressure and maintain coverage downfield, it's going to be problems for Virginia Union. So I think how clean Virginia Union is able to be, that's going to be very key. How aggressive the Virginia State defense is. Ultimately, this one is so tough to call. Like I'm just going back and forth by saying, I think Virginia Union is going to be much cleaner than they were last week, so I got Virginia Union. But also, I'm like, that Virginia State defense has been consistent all season, generating stops. I feel like they can win it, but it's so tough to call. If I had to right now put my money on it, I'll go with Virginia State, but this really could go either way. I'm going to say Virginia State, though. I think Dr. Henry Frazier gets it done. This is not Bowie State bias. I love my guy, Dr. Henry Frazier, but I feel like they'll get it done, but it would nothing would surprise me outside of a 30-point blowout.
Wow.
Anything other than a 30-point blowout. If it's a close competitive game, it doesn't matter who wins. Either it would not surprise me who would be. But if it's a blowout in either direction, that's the only thing that would surprise me.
Chris, care to make a prediction?
Yeah, I actually did make one. You guys can go to HBCUsports.com, by the way, and check out my predictions, which Kendrick Marshall has dubbed my crystal ball because, see, my name is Chris. And then, crystal ball.
You're Chris.
I saw that. You're Chris. Yeah, that was.
Yeah, that was pretty cool on Kendrick's part.
It was.
I did have a Miss Cleo impersonation ready, but my throat is starting to act up, so I'm not going to do it. But I will say this. I did pick Virginia Union 20-17 because I don't think that either one of these offenses is really going to run away from each other. I just don't see it. I feel like both of these defenses are good enough to keep everybody in sight. And right now, I just feel like Virginia Union's been here plenty of times before to the point where they know what the CIAA championship game is about. I mean, they just won the doggone thing last year. So wouldn't surprise me if they win again, but I have to agree with Jared. It feels like this Virginia State team has pulled together at the right time. Because remember, last year, as Jared pointed out, they were 7-0 and they just totally fell apart coming down the stretch. So maybe they learned those lessons from 2023. Maybe they pulled this off, but at the same time, I just lean towards Virginia Union because of the experience factor, because they've been there. They know what this is about. And they still want to get back to the playoffs and make a point that they didn't get a chance to make last year because they sent them boys all the way up to, can't remember if it was Kutztown or Shippensburg. Either way, it was one of those PSAC schools, and it didn't end well for them. So I know they want to try to get back and prove a point. So I'm going to go with Virginia Union.
I'm going with Virginia Union. Virginia Union. I just think it's there, man. I have no particular reason why. I just think that Virginia Union will probably pull it out. Just a gut. I'm not going to try to overanalyze it, but you did ask me to pick. Well, actually, you didn't, but I just felt the need to throw it in there. So, anyway. Okay, so this show is actually going to be kind of light. Like I said, for whatever reason, we just can't do things the way Kendrick Marshall does because, he taught his son how to do a flying suplex and he's in traction right now.
That's what the move was.
I'm just saying something. I'm just giving him a hard time. I really don't know. But on to a much more serious note, as you guys know, this is the Roundtable. And on Wednesdays, we tend to kind of move away from sports and we tend to address topics that are typically off the beaten path. But in this particular instance, it is not. It is very much HBCU related. And I guess to some degree, HBCU sports related. But because of how tragic it was, it is unfortunately something that I think we feel the need to address with respect to Tuskegee's homecoming and the unfortunate situation that took place. For those of you who may not be aware, Tuskegee had their homecoming celebration Saturday, and the school unfortunately witnessed gun violence, a mass shooting that resulted in, I believe, one person dead and I believe 16 people wounded. And I think of those 16, there were maybe a handful of individuals who weren't necessarily wounded due to the shooting, but I guess in the chaos that ensued as a result of the shooting, unfortunately, they were injured as well. So we thought that it was necessary to talk about this because unfortunately, this is not the first time that this has happened at an HBCU campus, and it likely may not be the last. But gentlemen, your initial thoughts about the tragic situation that took place Saturday on Tuskegee's campus. Chris, I'll start with you.
I first of all, I want to give credit to Tuskegee for their prompt response because this was a tragedy that you can't say it's avoidable because because people snap on a daily basis. Like apparently the perpetrator of this, who is in custody, thank goodness, mentioned that he was going to go on campus and start some stuff. Yeah. And now that, we have that information, it's clear that This has nothing to do with the students and the staff of Tuskegee University. This is just another rogue nut with a gun. And apparently he had one of those guns that you can modify into a machine gun, you know, with a certain part or whatever. Like, this country's obsession with guns is just terrifying no matter where you are. But now that it's touching our lives, I mean, we have to discuss it. But again, credit to Tuskegee for a prompt response and a prompt point of action. They said campus is going to be closed off now.
Yep.
You got to have a badge to get on campus. And I think that is the right move, because too many people, you know, just, you know, come on campus like, oh, I know this person, oh, I know that person. And then, you know, they don't have the clue to first, because I'll never forget many years ago when I was a student at Delaware State University, and they never found out who this person was, but apparently this dude was using a friend's name to get on campus and was sexually assaulting girls on campus for the most part. They never found out who it was. And that's been almost 20 years, or just about 20 years, for crying out loud. So we really need to do a better job of protecting our students and protecting, you know, their right to a fun and enjoyable college experience. So I credit Tuskegee for that, for their prompt response. I just feel like it's disappointing that you can't even send your child to an HBCU or any college for that matter, you know, and worry about whether you're going to be visiting them in the hospital, or worse yet, having them sent home in a bag or a coffin, because some nut with a gun just has to be, you know, violent. So I'm heartbroken for the people that are injured. I send them my best prayers and condolences to the person that lost their life. But, you know, Tuskegee did the right thing. They spoke out and said, this is what we're going to do moving forward. If you don't like it, you can get out. And I hope more HBCUs take that point of action moving forward, because we have to protect our campuses and our, you know, these kids' right to enjoy their education and have a good time in college, because that was ripped from the people at Tuskegee on Saturday, and it didn't need to happen.
Garrett?
Well, just to echo the point that Chris made, condolences to the young person that lost their lives, and prayers for healing for all those who were wounded either by the shooting or, you know, the melee that ensued. But for everyone who criticizes their respective universities for the strict security measures that are being taken on campuses due to homecoming activities, think of situations like this. Think of the homecoming shooting that happened last year at Morgan State. Think of the shooting that happened at Bowie's campus last year. You know, think about all of these situations that have happened, and think about how many lives could have been saved, or how many people could have been unharmed had we had stricter, you know, security measures. We cannot get to a point where we say they don't care, so why should we? Please, let's not get to that point. Let's not get to that point where we're making videos about this and speaking out, and we think that just because the view count is low, that we shouldn't care about speaking out about it anymore. Continue to put the work in to make sure that our campuses are safe, that our communities are safe, and that our young children are safe. Because the moment that we stop caring, more lives get lost, more people are put in danger, and more people are unable to enjoy their college experience. More people aren't able to realize their full potential, because people, like Chris said, nuts with guns, you know, rob people of the lives that God planned for them. You know what I mean? So I think we need to be better about speaking out against gun violence, speaking out against these activities, regardless of where it's happening, whether it be on college campuses or somewhere in the community. You know, we have to speak out about this stuff, because we're about to be in a time where gun usage is going to be the topic of conversation. And we have to make sure that our voices are heard. Everybody that says that, oh, this is corrupt, or they don't care about your voice, amplify it louder, to make sure that they can't ignore you, to make sure that they know that this is unacceptable. And let's get out of that attitude that, oh, this always happens. It's happening everywhere. It doesn't mean it's acceptable. It does not mean it's acceptable. We have to let people know that this is unacceptable, and we will not accept anything other than change. Because what if that was your son? What if that was your daughter? What if that was your brother? What if that was your sister? What if that was your mother? What if that was your father? What if that was your husband? What if that was your wife? You wouldn't want to hear somebody say, oh, this happens everywhere. Shootings happen every day. People die every day. Tell that to the family who's mourning the loss of their loved ones. Let's stop accepting the norm. Let's actually go for change. I understand that we feel like our voices don't have much power, that our opinions don't matter in this country, and you may be right, but let's amplify it louder to make it mean something. Let's make sure our voices mean something by coming together in a united front against gun violence, so that future young children don't have to suffer the same fate that these young kids have. Let's not have. I'm tired of saying rest in peace. I'm tired of saying get well soon. We have to say it anyway. Let's not have it be because of something that could have been avoided.
You done?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't want to interrupt you. There's not really a whole lot that I can add to this. Unfortunately, though, I think we've gotten to the point to where America, that whether the mass shooting incidents that we read about or that we hear about, whether they take place on a college campus, whether they take place in a mall, whether they take place in a supermarket, whether they take place in a hotel casino, whether they take place on a high school campus, whether they take place on an elementary campus. Unfortunately, and I'm not trying to counter your point at all by any means, but I think unfortunately we've gotten to the point to where we become tone deaf. I'm not saying that no one cares, but we hear about mass shootings so much, so often, with such frequency, that it unfortunately has gotten to the point to where for some of us it's, wow, like we're talking about it now. This is a shame. And at some point it'll have a shelf life, and it'll go away, and we'll go on with the rest of our lives. Not saying that we shouldn't. And we'll say that something needs to be done. Congress needs to take steps. We need to have some gun control measures in place. Those who are against it will say, no, it has nothing to do with the guns. It has everything to do with mental health. And there may be some truth to that too. But ultimately, nothing is going to get done. Unfortunately, we've had elementary school deaths, high school students to die, college students have died, people from all walks of life in this country for whatever reason. It happens. However, when you go to other countries, or when you hear about what happens in other countries like New Zealand and some of these other, all it takes is one. And for whatever reason, because the people in those countries view humanity, or they put humanity as a priority over the ownership of guns, something that unfortunately isn't high priority here for obvious reasons. Those countries can take proactive steps and say, you know what, once is enough. For us, once isn't enough. Twice isn't enough. 3 times isn't enough. You can have death. You can have assassination attempts on the U.S. president or president-elect. We've had assassination attempts on congressmen. It isn't enough. So, yeah, we need to continue to talk about it. We definitely don't need to stop talking about it. it certainly needs to become an issue, and we definitely need to address the issues whenever they happen, even when they don't happen. We need to do whatever we can to take proactive measures if we hear about it. You know, we hear that saying all the time: when you see something, say something. But unfortunately, the people who really can, who have the power to actually do something about it, because they have financial incentives not to do anything about it, won't do anything about it. And unless we, as American citizens, can make this a priority, now I guess to some degree put some money behind stricter gun control laws, I'm afraid to say that I just don't think a whole lot is going to get done. So, I mean, that's my commentary on that.
I have to agree with you, because I'll never forget that people in positions of power made fun of President Obama crying over the deaths of the first graders at Sandy Hook.
Yeah,
we should have known that the gun control issue was dead then, because if you can find whatever weakness, whatever sickness deep down in your soul to make fun of the president of the leader of the free world crying over the deaths of 6 and 7-year-olds, then we should have known that we were never going to get anything done with gun control. But at the same time, I agree with Jared. If we just keep talking up about it, then something's got to give. Something has got to give. Even if we have to just start, fighting fire with fire when it comes to humiliating, people who are so afraid to walk out of their houses without a gun, but the rest of us walk around free and easy without much fear. So if we got to start clowning those folks back, then so be it. But yeah, I mean, it really is good. I mean, it's going to take a lot of change. It is going to take a lot of effort, but we got to be built for the fight, man. That's really what it boils down to. We have to be built for the fight. I don't know what that's going to take. I don't know what it's going to, entail, but we've got to do something, because this cannot keep happening. It cannot.
Well, the thing that I'm wondering is, when are we going to get to the point where this is not even political anymore? This isn't
Amen.
about. This
That's a great point.
This isn't about if you are a Democrat or a Republican. It doesn't matter if you're black or white. It doesn't matter what your religion is. It doesn't matter where you're from, where you're going. It's about human life. When are we going to get to that? When are we going to get to caring about human life? When are we going to start caring about these young children and how all of these mass shootings are affecting them? Think about all the elementary school shootings and the people that survived. Think about the mentality that they have growing up in this world from that experience. Think about their parents who have to console them, and these kids whose friends died from these instances. And we're making fun of a president who got emotional. There was a couple of years ago where I forget the name of the MSNBC contributor. She's reporting on one of these mass shootings, and she gets emotional and she gets choked up and she's not able to finish her read. And then she goes on social media and she feels the need to apologize because she got emotional about human life being lost. Since when what kind of world do we live in where we have to apologize for getting emotional on air because we're reporting about human life being lost? When are we going to start caring about the people around us? Whether we agree with each other or not, whether we like each other or not, whatever happened to saying, I wouldn't wish death on anyone? Whatever happened to that? What is so personal about the animosity between the color lines and the religion lines? What is so personal that we wish death on each other? What is so personal about what we are going through? I don't hate anyone that much that I would laugh at them being emotional when they are recounting a human life being lost. When can we have some human decency? Where is the human decency? That whatever happened to love others like you would want to be loved? Treat others the way you would want to be treated. Whatever happened to that? It doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter what your morals and your values. That's just human decency. When are we going to stop? When are we going to stop hiding behind these labels and all of these things that have been manufactured to separate us, to divide us?
Well, so look, this is a very disheartening topic to end the show. But for those of you who have taken the time to watch this live episode of the Roundtable, we really appreciate it. We ask once again that you take the time to become a member of the HBCU Sports YouTube channel by becoming a level 1 or a level 2 supporter. And of course, you can always visit hbcusports.com, not only to get the latest in HBCU sports news and opinion and analysis, but also go to hbcusports.com/donate to make a donation to help support the channel. Okay. For Jared Hoffman, Chris Stevens, I'm Ken Rashad. This has been another live edition of the HBCU Sports Live Roundtable edition. We will see you next time. Okay. God bless you guys.